Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming tonight. My name is Merri-jo, and I'm here tonight to open you up to a new world that perhaps some of you have never seen before in terms of how to take back control of your health. As we get started, let's first look at some staggering statistics. Did you know that in the United States today, we write over 4 billion prescriptions on an annual basis? With the population of the U.S. only at less than 300 million at this time, that means for each individual alive and breathing in this country, we write over 13 prescriptions every single year. Did you know that 1.5 million Americans are injured or killed by medication errors on an annual basis, which cause billions of dollars of excess costs to our country? Did you know that taking properly prescribed prescription drugs is our number 4 killer in the United States? And that's just with the ones that are actually reported. People, these are staggering statistics. And even the experts today agree that this is something that's so well known, but so untalked about because no one knows what to do about it. A gentleman, Nicholas Webb, who was part of that medical industrial complex, felt so compelled to write a book called The Cost of Being Sick. And in his book, he said that lousy nutritional habits, a treatment versus prevention medical industry mindset, and the high cost of paying for prescription drugs are all emerging to create a healthcare perfect storm that will, if left unattended, swallow the healthcare industry whole and take a lot of Americans down with it. Another gentleman, Gerald Anderson from Johns Hopkins, stated recently, May 29, 2006, the investment in healthcare in the U.S. is not paying off. There is a massive amount of spending on things that really don't help patients and even put them at great risk. Everyone that's informed on the topic knows it, but it is such a scary thing to discuss that people are not willing to talk about it openly. Does anyone in here believe there must be a better way? Absolutely. And that's what you're here to hear about tonight. Because we know one thing for sure, that virtually every single disease condition is based on either toxicity or deficiency. And over the last 30 years, we've seen some remarkable breakthrough discoveries in the nutritional science field that has developed for us a new understanding about how defective and deficient our foodstuffs are that we're putting into the human body today. So let's jump in and look at what some of those breakthrough technologies are. The first one that I'd like to talk about has to do with a science that was discovered 30 years ago. It's called the science of glycobiology. And what it has to do with is how the cells in our body communicate. And if I took your human body today and I broke it down to its most foundational form, what would I come up with? A cell, exactly. The human cell. And how many cells do we have in our human body? Trillions, okay. Some people call it bunches. I think that's a good scientific term, too. We have bunches of those cells in our human body. And for any function to take place in our human body, those cells have to talk to each other. And to give you some idea what that looks like, everybody raise their right hand. And all I want you to do is move that index finger up and down. Now tell me, where was the concept first developed of moving that index finger? In the brain, of course. Our brain starts that. And did the brain electronically transmit data across the airwaves to cause the finger to move? Now, we live in a high-tech society. Isn't that how we do these things today? No, that hasn't changed. The concept of how our brain communicates is our brain transmits data through our central nervous system, which transmits it through the nerve endings down the arm to the finger and causes it to move. How many cells do you suppose had to talk just to get the finger to move? Bunches. Very good. There you're catching on. Exactly. Bunches of cells. And how simple is this function compared to the complexity of all the functions that take place in our human body? So cell-cell communication is critical for the function of our human body. Well, in the 50s, 60s, and early 70s, what was taught in med schools and medical theories, when two cells bounced up against each other, it was the proteins on the cell surface that created all that cell-to-cell communication. That was medical theory, that was in textbooks. In the late 1970s, a female, I emphasize that, ladies, a female mathematician came along, and she did a study on the molecular structure of the amino acid, which is only four-sided, so very limited in its structure. And she determined that it was impossible for the proteins to be responsible for the cell-to-cell communication because of the millions of bits of data for all the different functions taking place. So she threw out that medical theory. Of course, that caused a lot of doctors and scientists to be uneasy. So they went back in. They said, we must be missing something. Went back in to re-examine the cell surface. And at that stage, they had a piece of equipment called the electron microscope. And when they used that piece of equipment to go back in and look at the cell surface, this is an example of what they actually saw. What you see here is just the front cover of Science magazine, one of the most highly respected medical journals published in the United States today from 2002. They dedicated this entire edition of Science magazine to that breakthrough science called the science of glycobiology. And this picture, all this does is illustrate the outside of a cell wall. You see here the beige is a cellular membrane or the cell surface. The orange and the green balls on the surface are merely the lipids, fats, and the proteins or amino acids. The proteins being what they historically gave credit for cell-to-cell communication. But when they went back in with the electron microscope, they discovered the existence of all these blue balls. Literally thousands of them that cover the outside of every cell in your human body. And they form these tree-like structures. They immediately recognized when two cells bounce up against each other, what's the first thing to connect? Those blue balls. So they knew cellular communication was taking place between the blue balls. So they went in and did the biochemistry analysis of those blue balls and found out they were nothing more than simple carbohydrates. 8 different simple monosaccharides that make up what they now refer to as the glycosylation on the outside of every cell in your human body. A phenomenal discovery in that we never gave credit for carbohydrates except as a source of energy. Now, through this discovery, we found that carbohydrates, those 8 simple monosaccharides, play a foundational, functional role in the structure of our human body. As critical to you as if you looked at your computer system and looked at it and talked about the Microsoft operating system, where all communication takes place on a computer. Those blue balls, those 8 simple monosaccharides, are your human body's Microsoft operating system. So, incredible discovery about how our cells talk to each other. At the same time this discovery was made, there was another phenomenon going on in our country, and it had to do with a famous healing plant. So give me the name of a famous healing plant. Aloe vera, exactly. And we've been using aloe vera for how many years? I know we're going to hear the word bunches one more time. Exactly. Bunches of years. And would we all agree it has a phenomenal healing power? You put aloe vera on a wound and it heals like nothing else before. Well, in the late 1970s, we saw another phenomenon occur in our grocery store shelves. Ladies, remember, we'd walk down the grocery store aisle and all of a sudden tons of products started appearing. And we were washing our hair with aloe vera, we were putting it all over our face, we were eating it, we were putting it all over our body. Whatever the pharmaceutical giants said, we were falling for it. We had consumed mass quantities, built multi-million-dollar business overnight. In the early 1980s, the FDA stepped in and they started testing these products. And what did they find? More importantly, what didn't they find? They didn't find any active ingredient. So they went after the pharmaceutical giants and they said, hey, I don't think these ladies are buying this to get dead ingredients. You either find the active ingredient in aloe vera, put it back in the products, or take it off the shelves. One of those companies was here in Dallas, Texas, called Carrington Labs. And they said, we're not walking away from our multi-million-dollar business. So they hired a renowned pharmacologist, Dr. Bill McAnally, and they said, you discover it. He tore apart that aloe plant, couldn't find anything, just like the hundreds of scientists that had looked for this active ingredient for years. But by no coincidence, there is a gentleman in his lab that recently graduated from Oxford University. Oxford, see, as soon as this science was discovered, many universities jumped on the bandwagon with carbohydrate technology degrees, glycobiology programs, and Oxford was one of those universities that did that. This gentleman had just graduated, and he ended up in the lab at Carrington Labs. He looks at Bill McAnally and says, why don't we do a carbohydrate analysis? So they tore apart the next aloe plant, did a carbohydrate analysis, and guess what they discovered? The active healing ingredient in aloe vera is nothing more than a long-chain polysaccharide made of a simple monosaccharide called mannose. It's a sugar. And when they went back to the science of glycobiology, guess what one of those 8 simple monosaccharides are? In mass quantities on the outside of every cell in your human body. Nothing more than the manosaccharide. So in effect, every time you put aloe gel on a wound, all you're doing is doing what? You're putting a bunch of sugar on the wound, which is increasing the cellular communication in that exact spot, which augments the healing power of right at that area on the body. Well, McAnally saw this and said, oh my gosh, this is incredible. How can we extract that monosaccharide, because it becomes destabilized within 24 hours of you cutting a leaf off an aloe plant? How can he extract that monosaccharide and keep it in its active state so you and I can swallow it every day? And that's exactly what Bill McAnally set out to do. Not only did he discover the active healing ingredient aloe vera, but he also patented the process, still holds on to that patent today, the process of extracting mannose from aloe vera gel, maintaining it in its active state. And they built a product at Carrington Labs, and it was called Manipul. And they took that product to marketplace. Now imagine being the CEO of Carrington Labs. You just had a pharmacist in your lab who discovered for the first time in history the active ingredient in aloe vera. You just had a pharmacist in your lab who patented the process of extracting it and stabilizing so every person could eat it on the face of the earth. Do you think you had a product of the century? Oh my gosh. They spent millions of dollars taking it to marketplace. I don't have one of their products up here, but we'll pretend. The product was called Manipul. And they took it to the marketplace, and they were selling it on all the grocery store shelves, traditional marketing, health food stores, called Manipul. And at the bottom it said something like, increases cellular communication. Would any of you buy it? Come on, ladies. Manipul increases cellular communication. No, you wouldn't buy it, and no one else did either. In fact, some gentleman in one of my talks, he said, Merri-jo, would that help my Sprint phone? Increases cellular communication. That's what we think about when we think of cell-to-cell communication. This Manipul product was an absolute disaster in the marketing of it, and McAnally was so frustrated because he really felt he discovered a product of the century that he left Carrington Labs in the late 1980s, early 1990s, 1995, and he came over to the company we now know as Manitech. And he couldn't bring Manipul with him, but he looked back at the science of glycobiology and he said, you know, there are 8 simple monosaccharides that make up the glycosylation. How many were found in Manipul? 1, mannose. How many do we need in the foundational structure of our cell walls? All 8. So he and Dr. Reg McDaniel went out in nature. They discovered the sources in natural plants, extracted those saccharides, stabilized them just like in the process of utilizing mannose, and developed a product that contains all 8 of those necessary saccharides for our cell-cell communication. And that product came out in 1996. That product is called Ambertose. Ambertose, 1996. And in 1996, not only did this product come out, but there were changes that occurred. There was first of all, there was a change in the writing of Harper's Biochemistry, the leading textbook in med schools. What they did with that textbook is they actually added a chapter called Glycoproteins, chapter 56, in which they disclosed the 8 necessary saccharides for cell-to-cell communication. So rest assured, every pre-med student in the United States, across the world, were now being taught about the 8 necessary saccharides for cell-to-cell communication. Also in 1996, when this product came out, it won the Biochemistry Discovery of the Year Award. And the doctor that gave that award, the president of the American Naturopathic Medical Association, saw so many miracles in his practice that 2 years later he walked away from his medical practice and he committed the rest of his life to the further development of glyconutrient products. And the endorsement of this science has been nothing but phenomenal over the last 10 years. We've watched the expansiveness of this. We've watched numerous universities across the United States getting, massive grant money to do research around glycobiology. We see even the pharmaceutical giants jumping on board. They're building better drugs from sugars today all across the range. We also have statements being made by people like biochemist Gerald Hart of Johns Hopkins. He said this, referring to glycobiology, this is going to be the future. We won't understand immunology, neurology, developmental biology, or disease until we get a handle on glycobiology. So is this a breakthrough that's changing the world? Absolutely. It's a breakthrough that's changing health all over the world, and it has to do with those 8 simple monosaccharides for cell-to-cell communication. Why is it important that each one of us have it in our diet every day? Because if you lived on Earth 100 years ago, you would have been eating them in your diet every day. We used to get these saccharides from gums and saps and barks on tree, from moss, from fungus, from eating rice without being bleached, from eating all the greenery we collected, all these sources. You see, God gave us thousands of sources of plants on every continent in the United States that contain these simple monosaccharides. But what have we done over the last 100 years? Processed, pasteurized, synthesized, preservatized, refined our foodstuffs to death. To a point that today when we walk down the grocery store aisle, you'll most likely only find 2 of those 8 simple monosaccharides. So we have a severe deficiency in a foundational, functional product, nutritional element of our diets. It's a deficiency that's wreaking havoc on the human body, because when you don't have cell-to-cell communication, you're going to have miscommunication. And there's no way you can have an expectation of optimal health with miscommunication occurring in the human body. So that's one breakthrough you have to be aware of. Glycobiology, glyconutrients, absolutely mandatory for every person on the face of the earth to supplement with glyconutrients. The second technology I want to talk about today has to do with that familiar category of supplements called vitamins and minerals. We've known about vitamins and minerals for many years, haven't we? In fact, we've recognized the need for vitamins and minerals because we have such a deficiency in what's going on in our foodstuffs. Very much like what we just saw with glyconutrients, vitamin minerals was probably one of the first categories recognized as plant minerals that were deficient. We see studies that come out all the time, and the most recent one came out that I saw was in March of 2006. It was a research study that was done by a biochemist at the University of Texas in Austin. He determined, and he said, fruits and vegetables aren't what they used to be. New data suggests. I suggest old data suggested to us that same thing. Using data from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Donald Davis concludes that recently grown crops have shown decreases of up to 38% in protein, calcium, vitamin C, phosphorus, iron, riboflavin when compared with produce from past decades. He's only talking about today, 2006, versus 1990s and the 1980s. 38% drop in the last 20 years. And we knew 20 years ago we had a 30% drop from the 20 years before. So we can see what's happening out there. What is the cause of it? He says, what accounts for this negative trend? Well, a lot of us are pretty smart about that. It's not hard to understand. Like any other competitive industry, farmers' attempts to drive up profits have led them to use new techniques to increase production. The faster grown fruits don't have as much time to develop the nutrients. We also know that we see out there all the time. What are we doing to our soils? We're abusing them, depleting them. We're genetically modifying our fruits and vegetables. We're green harvesting virtually everything that we're eating today because that's the only way we can grow it in California and put it in the Texas grocery stores. So we see all of these things that we're doing to our fruits and vegetables to just basically strip them of the nutrition our bodies so well need. That today, even when you look at the food pyramid, did you notice the most recent food pyramid? What does it tell us we need? Vitamin and mineral supplements. And even that mighty institution we call the American Medical Association. They finally succumbed. We only supplemented with vitamin minerals for 50 years until they finally concluded that, yes, in fact, vitamin mineral supplements are good for the average American. In 2002, in the Journal of American Medical Association, the AMA stated, most people do not consume an optimal amount of vitamins by diet alone. It appears prudent to take vitamin mineral supplements. So we know it's important for us to take them. So what have we been doing in the vitamin mineral category? Well, let's do some research behind it. Our first generation of vitamins came out years ago, 40, 50 years ago. And what were those first generation vitamins and what did they look like? Well, early on it was established it was very difficult to gather vitamins and minerals from plants. So they synthetically created vitamins and minerals. And we had this first generation of almost 100% synthetic vitamins and minerals. That's why many of you can remember that you used to take them, and an hour later when you went to the bathroom, you could smell them. Because your body was dismissing everything you put in it. And our bodies aren't structured to absorb synthetics. In fact, there's plenty of clinical trial studies out there that show that our bodies absorb virtually no synthetic vitamins and minerals. Anywhere from, if you get one that's mixed with some food matrixing, you might get 10 to 15%. So we're spewing these vitamin minerals right throughout our system. So acknowledging that as a big problem, we came up with the second generation of vitamins and minerals. The second generation came from fruits and vegetable extracts. And they've occurred in the last 20 years. You've probably seen some of these, like noni and goji and zango and aloe vera, and you see these plant extract type vitamin mineral complexes. But there are numerous problems associated with that second generation. And what are those problems? Number one, many of those plants don't contain the whole panoply of minerals that we need. So what did they do with the second generation? They supplemented these products with synthetic minerals. Many of them, the fruits and vegetables, were already deficient because where are they being grown? In the United States. So you're not getting a quality vitamin mineral. Many of them, because all they did was take the plant, flash dry it, and put it in a product, there was absolutely no standardization. So you didn't know with each bite what you were really getting. And finally, the discovery was made in many instances with those companies that they would take the bulk part of the product, not just those that contained the vitamins and minerals, but the bulk, like the outside shell of the vitamin mineral, of the fruit and vegetable, and they would grind it up and add it to the supplement, even though it had zero nutritional value. So those things were coming up in that second generation, which caused tremendous inadequacy. And we were forced then to move on and say, there must be a better way. And tonight I'm here to tell you about a brand new breakthrough technology. It's called Phytomatrix. It is the first supplement in the entire nutritional industry that has 100% plant-digested minerals, vitamins in your daily recommended amounts, 100% standardized phytochemicals. It has sea plant-derived calcium and magnesium in it, and you've got the best product in terms of multivitamin in the marketplace, called Phytomatrix. Brand new product, 2006. So let's talk about the uniqueness about each of those characteristics of Phytomatrix. One characteristic was 100% plant-digested minerals. Why was that such a hard thing to ever come up with in the past? Because most plants contain trace levels of minerals. Does everybody familiar with that? So in order to get enough to meet your daily recommended amounts, you would have to utilize poundages of these vegetables and fruits to accumulate enough. Well, we've always known about a plant called the Indian mustard plant, also known as the Brassica juncea plant, that had a more than normal accumulation of minerals in it. And a company out on the East Coast chose to do some studies and trials with that Brassica juncea plant and started growing it under different conditions to see if it could actually accelerate the process of its absorption of minerals. And through hydroponic growing, using a mineral water base in that hydroponic growing, they came up with a patented technology of accelerating the production to where they now call it hyperaccumulation of minerals, plant digested in the Indian mustard plant. Isn't that amazing how they came to this conclusion? And I'm going to show you some of the data around that because it's pretty fascinating to see some of those numbers that are being produced from that hyperaccumulation. Here's a comparative chart that goes through different vegetables and what the recommended daily amount is by gram of that vegetable. Take, for instance, iron. In carrots, in 1 gram, you're getting 0.1% of your recommended daily amount. In broccoli, 0.7%. In spinach, 6%. In brassica, 0.9%. In the hydroponic grown brassica, 267%. Let's take, for instance, zinc as another mineral. In carrots, you're getting 0.3% per gram. Broccoli, 0.3%. Spinach, 0.5%. Brassica, 0.9%. In hydroponic grown brassica, you're getting 487% of your RDA amount of zinc. And that's what they discovered in this process. So that's the source of these 100% plant-digested minerals that you're getting in that Phytomatrix product. Incredible differential. The second factor was 100% plant-digested vitamins. Why is that so important to us? It's so important because when you take a plant-digested vitamin, what you're getting is you're getting all the natural sugars and the fibers and the organic acids in that food matrixing in that plant that accelerate the bioavailability, the absorption rate in your body, and also increase the functionality of that product in your body. So that's the critical importance there. The third aspect I talked about was the phytochemicals. Phytochemicals come from what? Vine-ripened fruits and vegetables. How many of us eat vine-ripened fruits and vegetables today? Unless you're growing them yourself, you're not getting them. Because everything's green harvested. Even the organic foods are green harvested. So if you want to augment those phytochemicals we're talking about are critical for the functions of our human body. The phytochemicals I'm talking about are like sulforaphane. They're like polyphenols. They're carotenoids like lycopene and lutein. They're like rutin. Rutin is called vitamin P. Some of you might be familiar with it. It was found to be crucial in our body's proper utilization of vitamin C, yet we're making synthetic vitamin C with no rutin with it. So we're learning all these incredible things, mixed tocopherols and glucosinolates. All of these are important phytonutrients that are found in Phytomatrix, which have been tied clinically in clinical trial studies to the effective support of healing in the human body of many of the chronic diseases our country suffers from today. And in Phytomatrix, they're all standardized. You know exactly what you're getting in each capsule of each one of these phytochemicals. What a blessing to have a product. I'm going to tell you, people, that this product excites me more than any product I've seen in years because it's so phenomenal as a mechanism of support. And it's something that everybody needs, and it's something everybody recognizes they need. So why don't you take a vitamin supplement that your body truly absorbs and utilizes every aspect of it to support every aspect of the human body, instead of one that you're dismissing because your body doesn't even absorb it. And that's the importance of Phytomatrix. Before we close tonight, I'd like to introduce two other technologies to you that you might not be familiar with. One has to do with antioxidants. Why are antioxidants important to us, people? Because we have so many free radicals, and I don't see any of you in the audience, but I sure was one in the 1960s, you know. Anyway, but and those aren't the ones I'm talking about. I'm talking about the ones in our air, and our water, and our foodstuffs. We eat, we drink, we get them in our body. Doctors are saying that each cell in our human body today is bombarded by 10,000 free radicals a day. And the free radicals do two things. They damage the cells, and the other thing they do is they cause the oxidative stress, or the, what? Rusting, or the aging of our cells. Now, there are many of us in the room, I suspect, are like me. We're baby boomers. And there's one thing we believe. We will never get any older, right? So it's important for us to make sure we get the highest quality antioxidant. And what's the problem with antioxidants in our marketplace today, people? What is the problem? Our antioxidants in the marketplace today are what? They're the same problem that we saw with the aloe vera plant. People cut it and they don't stabilize the active ingredient. Is the same issue with our antioxidants. When you cut green tea is a great antioxidant, don't we all agree? When you cut it, if you don't immediately freeze it or utilize it, it starts its oxidative stress. And so many of the green teas in the marketplace have no antioxidant value, because the manufacturers aren't regulated, so they can make it any way they want. And if you call them and ask them the question about how they process it, they say, well, we wouldn't do that because people wouldn't afford it. They wouldn't buy it because it would cost 3 times as much. So we are getting victimized out there in antioxidants that are totally ineffective. Manitech saw this, and they chose to travel all around the world. They looked at every society that lives over 100 years, their average longevity, and has been that way for years and years and years. I don't have to suggest to you that they didn't find any here in the United States, do I? No. They went all over. They found 5 countries, and they examined the foodstuffs of these societies to look at what's endemic to their arena that they've been eating every day for thousands of years. And they found in one it was tocopherols, which is just a fancy word for vitamin E. Another one it was quercetin, a fancy word for bioflavonoids. In Italy, they found they had something called wine that everybody drank, and wine comes from grapes. Grape skin extract happens to have one of the most resounding antioxidants called resveratrol, so Manitech chose that. Then they went out to an island off Japan, and they found that they drank a lot of green tea, so they used green tea, properly manufactured and processed to preserve the antioxidant value. And then they went down to Australia, and the people that live the longest in Australia are called the Aborigines, and they've been living the longest for thousands of years. And these Aborigines lived 108. Now, some of you in the audience look at me and say, I don't want to live to 108, Merri-jo. And the reason you tell me that is why? Because at 56, you're on 7 prescription drugs, and your entire exercise behavior looks kind of like this. Of course, you women in the audience never get to use that mechanism at home because it's in the man's control. But that's the way we live here in the United States. That is not how they live everywhere else in the world. That's why we in the United States have the claim to fame as being the most obese society in this world. But these Aborigines, they don't have nursing homes out in the outback. They work to 107 and then they pass away. Isn't that a beautiful existence, that you're able to have full utilization of your human body till the day you die? Not our style. So they studied their diets and they looked at what's so important in their diet. And they found out in their diets that they eat something called the Australian bush plum. The Australian bush plum was so important to this society that they made it part of their calendar system over 2,000 years ago. They eat it every day. So Manatech did the biochemistry analysis and found out it had the highest concentration of vitamin C of any plant then known on the face of the earth. So they signed a contract with the Aborigines to take their Australian bush plum to the world. And that's what they've done. They've accumulated those 5 ingredients, the tocopherols, the quercetin, the grape skin extract, the green tea, Australian bush plum, and they built a product called Ambertose AO. And in this product are those incredible antioxidants mixed together to give you a maximum antioxidant value. And it's incredible. Ask the person who shared this with you about the scientific studies behind this, the in vivo studies that support the effectiveness of this product on an antioxidant value. Terrific product. Everybody needs it. Do children need antioxidants? Absolutely. They get bombarded by free radicals just like you and I. It's a product for the whole family. The last technology I want to talk about is a technology that has to do with the endocrine system, and that has to do with the product plus. Our endocrine system needs support as well. And you know, for thousands of years, we used to eat all that greenery around our homestead. Do you remember, people? I know none of you ever were hunter-gatherers, but that's the history of our society. We were hunter-gatherers for thousands of years. We collected tons of that greenery from around our homestead, and that's what we ate on our kitchen table. You haven't seen that. Your parents never saw it. We have numbers of generations now that are far gone from that lifestyle. So what's the importance of those plants we used to collect? Because in those plants we had something called plant sterols, plant hormones. We were meant to eat them every day of our life. In the Bible it tells us, Genesis 1:29, I give you the herbs on earth as your sustenance. But what has happened again? Over the last 100 years, we've become a sophisticated society. Mass population, mass production. We're no longer eating from the land. We're eating Cheetos, Doritos, and what I call banditos. That's the rest of the stuff on the grocery store shelf. And we've totally changed that diet. Why are plant sterols so important for our body? Well, let's talk about that endocrine system. We all have an endocrine system that's built of different glands. How many glands do we have in our body? Bunches. We got the hypothalamus, we got the thyroid, the parathyroid, the thymus, the pancreas, the adrenals, the renals, and the reproductive organs. All of these are our glands. And our glands are responsible for producing our hormones. And you know what? It's incredible. I've been in this health industry now for almost 10 years, and I'm going to share with you that in all the experiences I've had, 60% or more of all drugs people take today have to do with endocrine system failures. Whether it's antidepressants or thyroid medication or diabetic medication, it's rampant in our society. So we have a lot of issues around those glands non-functioning, don't we? In fact, all of us, the AMA tells us, all of us are hormonally out of balance. And the 3 reasons they give us are stress. We do live in the most stressful environment of all times. I don't have to go through too many factors to tell you why we're so stressed out. Whether it's the, 9/11, the Iraq crisis, Iran, Korea. You talk about 65% of the people living in California can't even afford to buy a house today. How about just mentioning the word credit card debt? That usually causes a few chilling moments in people's lives. We have tremendous stress in our society, and stress causes our glands, not only your immune system, to shut down, but your glands to start shutting down at earlier and earlier stages. The second factor is toxicity. We live in the most toxic environment in the history of mankind. More toxins are added every single year, and those toxins don't just store in your fat, they also store in your glands, causing them to shut down earlier. And the third factor the AMA gives is lack of nutrition. And we've already been through that for half an hour, so we all accept the fact we're nutritionally unfed. So those are the three major factors. The other one I want to bring up with you is just one that's called, how many of you are getting hormones in your body that you didn't expect to get in that body? Anyone out there eating beef, drinking milk, eating chicken, drinking tap water? You see, there's a reason our cows are producing so much more milk today than they did 20 years ago. Is it because we have better farming techniques? Or is it because we're using steroids and antibiotics and all sorts of things to cause the mass production of milk, which ends up in the milk and in the beef, and you eat it, and guess what happens? And you drink it. And those hormones get into your system. We have a couple of little girls in Wichita, Texas. They love milk. Their mom said, sure, drink 6 glasses a day. At 6 years old, they're a size B cup. Hair in their armpits, pubic hair at 6. I remember when that happened to me at 11 and how embarrassing a time of my life that was. Could you imagine at 6? We're putting all these excess hormones in our children, and we're just really destroying their normal life cycles. And it's happening everywhere, people. And let's talk about the water supply. How many of you are familiar with Lake Mead? Lake Mead is a reservoir out west. 4 states dump all their water from their water treatment facilities into Lake Mead after they've all been treated, and they recycle them back in the homesteads in those 4 states. 7 years ago, they did a study of the water in Lake Mead, and you know what they found? They found that the male fish were producing eggs in Lake Mead. Why is that happening today? It's happening because how many women do you know on birth control pills or on hormone replacement therapy, every time they go to the bathroom, they dump a ton of estrogen in our water supply? And as I stand before you here tonight, there is no known technique to take estrogen out of the water supply. So it's going right through the water treatment facility plants into the reservoir, and it's recycled back into your shower heads and your water faucets. And if you don't think that's a problem, people, last year they published an article in the London Sunday Times. And it said the fastest growing surgery being done was breast reduction in men. They also said that they determined that those same female hormones in the environment and in the foodstuffs that were affecting the breast sizes of men were also the causative factor in the sperm count reduction in men in London, reducing by over 33% in the last 10 years. These are crucial things that are happening. We're changing the makeup of our own human bodies by these problems that we're creating. So what is the problem? The problem is if you have hormonal imbalances, and what do they look like? This is usually where the men in the audience nudge their spouses and say, honey, stand up, you're a perfect example. Okay, yeah. Anyway, if you don't have enough serotonin, you suffer from depression, your thyroid's not working, you have energy slumps. If your pancreas isn't working, you have blood sugar level problems, your adrenals could cause hair falling out, soft fingernails, PMS symptoms, osteoporosis, hot flashes, anxiety attacks, panic attacks, inability to sleep at night, eating disorders. These are all symptoms of hormonal discrepancies. And if you go to your doctor and you knock on his door and tell him about these symptoms, what's his response to you? Oh, it looks like Prozac, Zocor, Zoloft, Premarin, Primpro, Celebrex, Synthroid, Lipitor, insulin. Am I ringing any bells? It's a whole panoply of drugs that they throw at you. Do any of those drugs heal or cure the human body? No. That's why when the doctor gives you a prescription for them, he says, you will take this the rest of your life, because it takes the place of a malfunctioning gland. Our approach is, why not help the gland to start working again? Is that such a novel approach to health? I believe it's truly what we were meant to do. And the reason we have so many discrepancies in our hormones today is because what have we left out of our diet? Hunter-gatherers, plants, plant sterols, plant hormones, they're gone. Supplement that diet with plant hormones and give your body's endocrine system support that it desperately is crying for every day of our lives. We desperately need it. We need to support that to help support the glands to function properly, and then watch how your body responds. And that's the critical importance of plant sterols. That's the critical importance of Plus. It's a terrific product to help support those glands. And for you men in the audience, no, it's not just a lady's product. I have a husband at home. I say he has so many cycles, I call him a bicycle. We are a plus-fed family. We have issues about hormones in everybody in our household, and it's important that we get the support for that endocrine system to support our family's existence under that roof. So you heard tonight, what did you hear about tonight? All we've talked about is one thing, and it's very simple. It's called food. That's all I've talked about, the whole talk. F-O-O-D. We talked about glyconutrients. We talked about phytomatrix. We talked about antioxidants, and we talked about phytosterols. All it is 100% natural foods. You don't get them anymore, people. They don't exist on your grocery store shelves. You can buy all the calories you want out there, but you better find a source of your nutrition, because it doesn't exist out there anymore. They used to say supplements were optional. I'm going to tell you, absolutely not. Supplements are mandatory today. And find the ones that support your body to such an extent that you really can live and believe in yourself to achieve that optimal health. And that's why I share this story with everyone around the world as often as possible. You see, the National Institute has told us that there are only 2 reasons that Americans will not have the incredible vitality and longevity that we were meant to have in our lives. The number 1 reason is ignorance. We don't have the knowledge. Again, that's the reason I go out and preach and teach every day of my life how to take back control of your health, how to be responsible, quit going victim to the medical industrial complex. I don't want to see any of you become a statistic. But tonight, you've learned something. So you cannot walk out of here and at any time in your life, again, claim ignorance, can you? Because I've taken that excuse away. But the second reason the NIH says we won't achieve that is because of complacency. And complacency has to do with choice. And the choice is totally yours. If it were mine, I'd have no problem. The world would be taking these products. But the choice is truly yours. You've got to decide for yourself. Are you going to step up and make a decision that's right, take back control of your health, feed the human body what it desperately needs? Or are you going to make a decision to become that statistic? The choice is yours. And I just invite you to step up to the plate and make great decisions for you, your family, your loved ones, and help others, because we are in desperate need. Thank you for coming tonight. I appreciate y'all being here.